All right, welcome to the penultimate talk of the FOSDEM 2020 Distribution Dev Room. Up next we have Frédéric Crozat talking about integrating new components on fast and slow-moving distributions.
Hello everybody. I'm Frédéric Crozat. I'm working at SUSE as one of the SUSE Linux Enterprise release manager for server and desktop. And yeah, I will walk you through how we handle changing big parts of the distro on the various distro we take care of. But first, some words about SUSE. So we don't do this thing. So this is mostly for French-speaking people. But we do this thing, especially if you were at the booth of the OpenSUSE booth. But yeah, more seriously, before we go into more the details and the policies we use, first a bit of general vocabulary so that we are all at the same level. About distribution style. So roughly, these days, there are three kinds of distribution style. What we can call rolling release, regular release, and LTS or enterprise or stable releases. So rolling release, what do we mean by that? It's usually bleeding edge, sometimes a bit too bleeding. Released as soon as possible, as fast as possible. And as example, I would say OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, obviously, Arch, Gentoo, and probably others. Regular release, it's a thing which came first in the Linux world. Usually, distributions like that are released one time a year, sometimes two times a year. In the very old days, some crazy people were doing that every 3 months. I was part of those crazy people. The thing is, those distro, for each release, they update everything, which can have bring a lot of challenges because you have to stabilize everything at once. And then you have the LTS or enterprise releases, which are released very less often. So yearly cadence, sometimes even less than that. And there, the point is to change as little as possible. The reason is, especially in the enterprise market, customers are extremely frightened as soon as you change one bit somewhere, because if they have validated their entire infrastructure, oh, it's running fine with this version of this distro, and then you tell them, yes, but you need to upgrade to the next service pack, and they are like, oh my God, so how much has changed? Can you guarantee that those packages have not changed, etc.? So it's really a matter of changing as little as possible, but still bringing bug fixes, new feature, etc., etc. So there, I would put OpenSUSE Leap. I will explain a bit later. Ubuntu, the LTS flavor, and on the enterprise market, the SLE family, SLES and SLED, RHEL, you name them. So now, jumping more into the OpenSUSE and SUSE world, I will use a lot of acronyms. OBS. So who has heard about what OBS is? Ooh, that's nice. So for those who didn't put their hands up, OBS, and I see you, Internet, OBS is the Open Build service. It's a service that OpenSUSE is provide to everybody to build packages for almost every distribution. Not just the OpenSUSE distribution, but it can be for Fedora, for Red Hat, for Debian, Ubuntu, yeah, tons of distribution are supported. So that's what is part of our processes. So SLE, as I already mentioned, SUSE Linux Enterprise, it's an enterprise distro that SUSE is creating. There are several flavors, server, desktop. OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. So Tumbleweed is a rolling release, as I said before, of OpenSUSE. I will maybe sometime talk also about OpenSUSE Factory. The point is that initially OpenSUSE Tumbleweed was a rolling release created by Greg Kroartman based on a regular release of OpenSUSE, and then he was changing a lot of things on top of it. And after a lot of discussion, a lot of processes put in place, now the development distribution, which is OpenSUSE Factory, is then tested and shipped from time to time, and this is what we call OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. More on that later. OpenSUSE Leap, it's a stable / LTS release of OpenSUSE. The point is it's a mix of components coming from the SLE, so from the SUSE distribution, plus a lot of other packages coming from Tumbleweed / Factory. The same. So it's a mix of something new, something old, and something new. Some people might say it starts to resemble things about wedding, but no. Anyway, let's talk about how we handle integration of changes in the OpenSUSE and SUSE world. First, in the OBS, so in the Open Build Service, we have the concept of develop project. The point is that every source, when I say source, I mean source package. Every source package need to be in a project, and a project can aggregate various packages, source packages together. And we tend to have those projects, so those develop projects per topic. So you want obviously to group things together, like having all the things around X11, so the X11 server, plus the libraries in a single project, because usually they will have to be built together. Same about KDE stuff. KDE, all the KDE packages would be in a KDE project. A project can be cut in several sub-projects, but that's roughly the idea. Same for GNOME, etc., etc. And any changes in those projects are done. Sorry. Any change in the distro, sorry, has to be done first in a develop project, and then pushed to the upstream distro, let's call it this way, or the downstream, depends, to the distribution for integration. The push can be made either by a human being or bot. How does it work? Don't be frightened by the schema, but you have done some work on any random packages. So it has been done in the develop project. Now you want to push this work in the distro, let's say in Tumbleweed. So the thing is, you are going to do what we call a submit request, which is basically the big diff of changes. You push that to this distro, and then the magic or the pain, it depends where you are begin. So there are going to be several things done at the same time. First, this change is going to be put on what we call a staging project. This is a snapshot of the distro, and we take this snapshot and we just put this change in it. And we rebuild the distro based on the build dependencies, etc., caused by this change. So this is building. Then at the end, you will end up with a mini distro. The distro rebuilt with this change. And then you give that to OpenQA, which is another OpenSUSE project, which, how many people know about OpenQA in the room? Let's say half. So for the other half of the room, OpenQA is an automated testing framework based on image recognition, among other things, which is there to mimic a human testing a distribution in all the applications. So it's going to start the distribution, so in a virtual environment or sometimes even on real hardware. Click everywhere where it's needed. Check that, yes, you get the proper button at the right location, etc., etc., etc. So install a system, then run it. Check that whatever application you expect to run, etc., etc. So we have that on one side, and in parallel we have reviews done on the change itself, like review on the code itself. Does it add a patch? Is it well formed? Is it introducing a vulnerability? Is it with a reference to an upstream commit, for instance? There is other reviews like is the entire thing correct in terms of legal license? So there is a license tag. Is there something in the tarball which is under a proprietary license, etc.? And a lot of bots are doing automated check on that. And just with the automated check, we already catch a lot of errors. Based on those two, if everything looks fine, basically you have a change, it doesn't break the entire QA thing. So then we commit, we accept the change, we put it in the distro, we rebuild the entire distro, and then we have a new ISO that we are going to put again in OpenQA, but this time not with a small subset of the test suite, but the entire test suite. When I say you have one submit request, in fact, we never do that with just one change. Usually we aggregate change together, either because they need to be aggregated, like you need to upgrade two things in parallel, or you upgrade that and you need to patch this other package and this other package, otherwise it breaks. And of course, it would mean if we were doing one staging per change, we could not keep up with the pace. I forgot, if you have questions during the talk, please ask them. Don't wait at the end. Interrupt me. So another thing that we have, so this is more for the SUSE part of the thing. We have a policy that we call factory first, which has been in place for quite a while, 2017. Which is kind of, we want to make sure that all the work which is done on the enterprise distribution, which is sometimes a bit on older software, has to be always pushed to the factory or tumbleweed thing, to make sure that we don't keep things just for the enterprise customer, but it's available to everybody. Even if you're an enterprise customer, everything is under free software license. It's not the point. The point is to make sure that we always retrofit and push our patches or changes upstream being tumbleweed, but then, of course, being in the upstream project. So this is very important because based on our experience, it was not always the case in the past, and sometimes we had to fix bugs when we rebase our code base and take a new snapshot of tumbleweed to create the next generation of SLE. We discovered that a bug which has been there for 8 years, we patched it every 2 years when we were redoing the branching because the patch was never upstream. And the worst part was when we upstream it, it was still applying. So it would have been done 8 years ago, and that would have saved work for people over the years. But anyway, so we have that in place, and we have a lot of bots ensuring that this is done properly. So now,
there's also actually a measure to avoid that SLE and the other distributions drift apart.
Yes, so comment from the room, it's also a way to make sure that SLE doesn't go in one direction and OpenSUSE is in another direction, because in the end, SLE is a downstream of OpenSUSE. So if we, I mean, you all know you hack on distro. So as soon as somebody tries to do a downstream and doesn't contribute back his changes, then they are the ones who are going to feel the pain later. There are a ton of examples there. So let's talk about GNOME 3.34. So over the previous, the last months, we have been working on upgrading GNOME in the various distro. So let's go over that. I talked about the Devel project on OBS. So usually there is one Devel project, which would be in that case GNOME, but the OpenSUSE GNOME team has decided to use 2 layers. One layer, one project, which is the GNOME Factory Devel project, which is really the Devel project. Oh my God. Sorry for people on the internet. I hope I didn't kill your ears. Twice. Let's avoid a third time. So yes, GNOME Factory is the project which contains the last version, the latest version of the stable version of GNOME. So until September last year, it was 3.32. Then 3.34 was released. So that's where you expect to have the latest version. And then GNOME having a cadence of 6 months. There is another project on top of that, which is GNOME Next, which is obviously by its name, it's what's going to happen in GNOME in the future. The idea is to have in this project not the development packages of GNOME from the beginning, like when there is a .1 or .2 of the next version, because it changes often and sometimes maybe more in the past. Everything would not build properly, etc. These days it has improved a lot. But at RC, at release candidate time of GNOME, having the packages there so that we can start preparing everything in advance. And this also allows to these 2-layer things. If we get bugs report on the stable version, we still can push those bug fixes to our users. They are not blocked because there is a development version being integrated. Yep, and as I said, GNOME Next is layered on top of GNOME Factory. So OBS is smart enough to do links and branches. So it will detect if you do a change in the stable branch, so GNOME Factory, it will propagate immediately to GNOME Next. So this way we know we are not going to lose a fix because we fixed something. And then we rev up the version of the package, and sometimes you end up losing things. So, upgrading 3.34 in Tumbleweed. So as I said, the packages were upgraded to 3.33.90 something during the release. And we had also an automated build of a live image. So you know this kind of ISO. In the old days, you were burning a CD, you were putting that in a computer, and you were booting the CD directly. You didn't install to test things. These days you can do that with a VM, but still, the point was, let's create an image based on Tumbleweed. We just replace the GNOME on top of it with the GNOME Next packages, and let's see if it boots. And it works, like application start. Having that already helped a lot to make sure that what is in GNOME Next works good enough. even if it's just a few tests, not the entire test suite, but still. Yeah, so that's what I described. And then GNOME 3.34 was released. 0.0 was released. And then the work was to get this pushed into GNOME Factory. This is a bit tricky because open source GNOME people like to do things right. Yeah. So what do I mean with that? Is in GNOME Next, basically, people can submit things, even commit things directly if they are part of the open source GNOME team. If they are not, they can just submit a change request. It's going to be reviewed by somebody else. But any change in GNOME Factory has to be reviewed by 4 eyes, which means the person who submitted the change or the version update, it needs to have 2 other people reviewing what he or she did. Because, yeah, it's kind of ensuring that there is a good quality of the change. Sometimes even up to, is the changelog properly spelled? So that's why when I say the open source GNOME team is sometimes very picky. But that's kind of to ensure that over time, those packages will be easy to maintain by somebody else. So once 3.34 landed in factory, then it was pushed to Tumbleweed. Then there is another 4 eyes review. This is not done by the same people. This is done by the open source review team. So again, they checked things. Sometimes they noticed things that skipped through the open source GNOME team. But overall, usually it's quite smooth. There is a legal review of the changes. For GNOME, it's usually not a problem, but sometimes you can have one random packages which is pulling one GitHub repo in a tarball, a copy of a GitHub repo where there is a test case which is under whatever fancy license, and then the legal bot say, I need a lawyer, I cannot pass it. We have that, and then we have this entire staging approach that I described earlier, where we put GNOME in it, and then we try, does the rest build? And sometimes, yes, sometimes not really. So we have to make sure that there is this package, this other packages, and the third one, which were fine before we try to upgrade GNOME. Now they are no longer built, so then we notify the maintainer of those other packages. Could you have a look? Because if we accept this staging, which we won't, it's going to break your packages. So we do that at the compilation level, and then at the QA testing level, open QA, where it's going to install the mini distro with the entire GNOME update. So this time install, not just a live image, and then run all the possible tests which are written, like, I don't know, starting gedit, starting evolution, making sure you can still read your mail, whatever. And often you discover that because OpenQA is based on image recognition, some pixels have moved a bit. The theme has changed completely. So there is a bit of fuzziness. So OpenQA can be set up in a way so that it doesn't expect 100% match, but being fuzzy up to 95 or 90%, I don't remember what is the default.
95 is the default.
Yeah, Richard is telling me 95 is the default. So sometimes if it's like the font has changed a bit, but not too much, so the fuzziness will make sure it's okay. But yeah, with 3.34, I think it's 3.34 that the theme was updated to something distinctly. I mean, a human could see there is a difference. then we had to update the needle. Yes, question?
You described this kind of three-tier branching system that you use for the packages. There's the main line of OpenSUSE, and there's the GNOME package,
Yep.
and there's the GNOME staging.
Yep.
Do you have a similar branching strategy for the OpenQA tests? Because you mentioned in the previous slide that you had to pass some of the OpenQA to even get to this point.
So the question was, we have this kind of layer on the distro level or on the package level. Do we have the similar concept on the OpenQA level? So we don't have it, but we have something a bit different. Is that OpenQA is not when it's expecting to check for a needle, so to check for a screenshot and finding something which match. It doesn't search for just one matching. We have a list of matching, possible acceptable thing. And also with that, we have some tags. So we can say, you can accept not any of the screenshots we have put aside, but those which were tagged like, this is for starting evolution. And then we will be at that point in time in the test, we are expecting a needle which is starting evolution, check all which are in the database. It's a GitHub repo, but checks all of those, and if one match, we are good. And we can even refine with something like we want a repo, a tag of starting evolution, and the distro is Tumbleweed or is SLE or is OpenSUSE Leap, because sometimes we have things which are different but on purpose. Yes?
Do you use text recognition to avoid these issues with screenshots sometimes? Or?
So question was, do we use text recognition to avoid the screenshot thing? No. I don't think it was ever tested. It was? Yes?
Well, this was way better.
So answer from the audience from Richard Brown. So it was tested, and the current approach is way better. Yeah. So it's surprisingly good, let's say, because one thing I forgot is on the needling part, we don't do full screen matching. We can just highlight, I want to check one part of the screen, like this button or this text, and even if it moves a bit in the image, in the result, the matching will be fine. So with that plus the fuzziness, it's usually able to catch a lot of things. But it can be a pain, for instance, for localization, because we don't test the distro in French, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, because it would mean we have to redo all the needles. Okay, then, once the staging was accepted, there is an OpenQA running again, but this time with the entire test suite. And if it works, there is a bot which is going to say, yeah, sounds good. There is as much breakage as before, so we didn't break much as before. So the quality is the same or improved. It didn't decrease. And the bot will automatically release the build to our OpenSUSE Tumbleweed user. So in this case, 3.34.0 was available less than a month after it was available upstream, which is good and bad at the same time. It's good because it's less than a month. It's bad because we were able in the past to be even better than that. Sometimes we were able to release it the day after the release of upstream. Or even sometimes the same day because the tarball are already a bit before. This time it didn't work well because we are lacking hands to do the packaging. So if you are willing to help, please join. It's fun. So I talk about OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. Let's talk about SLE and OpenSUSE Leap. First, I said about Leap that it's based on on SLE, but how do we do things? The idea is there is a set of packages which are, SLE is a bunch of packages. From those packages, we create what we call a share core. And then Leap is reusing that and inject all the packages which are coming from Tumbleweed, which are the latest and greatest, let's put it this way. And we do that for the 15.0 code base. So this is where we branch directly. We took a copy of Tumbleweed. We just kept the packages we wanted for an enterprise distro. And for Leap, the community decided, oh, we want also those packages because they are not part of the enterprise distro, but the community wants those packages. For instance, SUSE doesn't ship anymore as supported packages, the KDE environment. We just ship one desktop, which is GNOME. The other desktop are available through the community by either in Leap or with another mechanism which is called package up. But I will not go too much into details about that. We do that for the major release, so 15.0. And then SLE has a cadence of doing a service pack every year, which is, and the idea is a bit TikTok approach, where there is one service pack where there is going to be mostly stability fixes, plus a few feature. And then the next iteration will be, let's update a bit more things, because we are starting to educate enterprise customers. Yes, you can still upgrade the kernel while being in a stable distro. It's a bit difficult, but they are starting to get it. And we do, for instance, also we update the desktop, also from time to time. So we don't have the pain of maintaining a very old desktop. And this way, customer can enjoy new feature from the desktop upstream, and we enjoy less bug fixes to backport also. So how we did it for SLE 15SP2? So we had GNOME Next, so on OBS, and there, it was building on top of Tumbleweed. So we added another repo in this project. Let's build it on top of SLE 15SP2, which was and is still under development. Yeah, I forgot. SLE 15SP2, the development is always available on the OBS, so you can see where we are going. This is not behind closed doors. So then we looked at how much it broke, because even if we have this factory first policy, we make sure to push all our patches to Tumbleweed, but sometimes we push patch, but we don't apply them or we don't enable them, because some changes are really for enterprise customer, and you don't want to do that for, let's say, regular or non-enterprise customer, where it's like limiting things, etc. So we don't want to have a lot of people shouting at us. So we discovered this kind of breakage, like patch not applying anymore, so we had to update that. Then, because SLE is kind of older than Tumbleweed, we discovered, this doesn't build because it needs this new package which is not in SLE. Or, this doesn't build because it needs the latest version of Meson. So now we have to update Meson in the next service pack. And then you discover, but we need to update CMake also, because the test suite of Meson doesn't pass anymore, because you need another fix in PKG config, because the one we had was a bit too old, and it had a bug which only is seen in the test suite of the latest Meson. So this is the kind of, you start to put the finger there, and it's like, oh my God. But it's interesting. It's challenging, but it's quite interesting. And you also discover that even if the Tumbleweed, the packages done by the OpenSUSE GNOME team are of high quality, sometimes anybody can miss that, oh, you need another, there is a build requires which is a new version of this package. It happened, it was already in Tumbleweed, so nobody noticed that it need to upgrade this in the build requires, but in SLE it's not the case, so you have a random failure of why it's not building. So this kind of thing we went through. At the same time, we also created a staging project. Same idea. We take SLE, which is under development, as a base. We put GNOME, the GNOME rebase on top of it. We check, does it build? Then, yes, it builds. Let's create a distro from that, and let's run an OpenQA and fix all the needles and all the test case and all the changes which were not really expected because you upgrade whatever component. Then, for instance, over 2 or 3 releases, I don't remember, now GNOME shut down GDM when you are logged in. So you no longer have GDM running in your initial graphical console. Except that there was some test case in OpenQA which were kind of, oh, let's search for GDM to detect where which VT it's using. There is no longer GDM running anymore, so you are like, I need to update the test case. This kind of thing. Yep. So what did I say? Yep. As I said, we also make sure to push to SLE only, not the entire GNOME Next project, but just the packages which are shipped on SLE. Because again, we don't ship everything to our enterprise customer, and all the other packages, they are always available to the enterprise customer through what we call Package Hub, which is kind of a repo where all the packages which are available on Tumbleweed, more or less, on LEAP, are available to SLE customer unsupported. So they can, and we say, you can install those packages on your distro, but don't call us. They won't be supported, but we won't tell you you broke your system because you installed those packages. We double check those. So to get things into some green state, it took roughly a month. Then okay, this looks great. Let's accept it. We accept it. And then we started to see another set of failure because for speed reason, we do things on Intel platform for our staging, because already building this and having the test run, it's kind of time consuming. So we don't usually do the staging approach on other architecture, except that the SLE world is like, we support AR64, PPC64LE, so power, and mainframes. So yes, you can have GNOME running on a mainframe. We even discovered that we were the only one for this version of GNOME. We were the first one trying to do it because it was not working and it was a bug upstream. Despite other distros having it built, but apparently nobody was ever tried to run it. Kind of funny, it was a bit of a pain to debug it. In the end, it was not even GNOME fault, it was a bug in the Mozilla code base, because Mozilla doesn't care about mainframe, obviously. Yeah. So, but we were able to backport the proper fixes. So, and we even had, after fixing that, we updated also the rest of the application. And sometimes we forgot things. So we discovered after a while, oh, let's rebase things, and then, wait, I think I forgot to update dconf. So I had one of the layer which is kind of saving all the configuration on disk for GNOME. I had the version of GNOME 3.26, and everything was running fine. So it's
Enterprise stable.
Yeah, enterprise stable. So we can say GNOME is enterprise stable, or at least dconf is enterprise stable. But it was surprisingly, I would have expected to have random bugs here and there. No, So right now we are running at 3.34.2, between 1 and 2, because we have a few packages. We did that before the Christmas break, so we will update soon to 3.34.3 or maybe 4 if there is a .4 release. So we have GNOME in SLE since the full version, so since November. Then we should have GNOME in Leap, because after all, Leap is created on top of SLE, so it should be fine. It should be easy. Not really. One thing I didn't tell you, I mean, I kind of told you, but is that the difference also between SLE and Leap is that on SLE, when we do a service pack, when we can avoid changing a package, we don't touch it at all. Which means on service pack 1, everything which is untouched between service pack 0 and service pack 1, we just grab the binary package. We don't rebuild things, because it's kind of this mindset of customer, oh my God, you change packages, you are going to break everything. These days with reproducible builds and all of that, it should be less of a problem, but even getting to a state where 100% of our packages is reproducible, we are not there yet. And even when we be there, I hope, it will be to get this mindset into people's mind, into enterprise people minds, into administrator, etc. It can be very tricky. So SLE is kind of, let's modify as little as possible. But SLE is this idea of layer of service pack. Service pack 1, service pack 2 is done on top of service pack 1, etc. OpenSUSE Leap, it's not a layered system. It's a regular distro. So a regular distro where you rebuild everything when you want to do your new next version. So, which means bootstrapping the distro, which means you discover that even though you have your GNOME packages which were able to build fine on SLE 15 SP2, everything is nice and shiny, then you try to rebuild the entire distro, not just the service pack that you have modified, but it's everything, and then you discover that, oh, that's not really working, because there are other packages which are either not part of SLE, which are just in Leap. Not KDE, but for instance, for a while we didn't have upgraded GIMP, so GIMP was not building anymore. We did upgrade it, but there were other random packages using GTK maybe or whatever, which would not build anymore, so we had to update that. So it was painful, let's be honest, to get to a point where everything was rebuilding fine for Leap. When I say painful, I mean it took 45 days. Okay, there is a Christmas break in between, but still, it took, and nicely enough, the staging containing GNOME 3.34 for Leap was accepted this week, just in time for FOSDEM. So I didn't push them or OpenSUSE release manager to accept the staging. It just happened that, yes, all the roadblocks were no longer there, so we were good to have it, which means the next milestone of, so in terms of milestone, which means kind of milestone before the final release, the next development milestone of OpenSUSE Leap 15.2, which should happen, maybe it happened today, I don't know, but it should happen next week, let's say, because it's kind of automated. It will have GNOME 3.34.4. And I'm already, my God, I was fast. There was not enough question in the audience. So yeah, to summarize, we have a great system to build things, which is open build service, which if you want to use it, you don't even have, I mean, you can use the instance we provide, but you can even install it on your system. There are people running their own Open Build Service instance on their system to create their own packages. So with Open Build Service, with OpenQA, again, OpenQA is not just an OpenSUSE and a SUSE project. Fedora is using it. I don't know if other distros are using it. Yes. Endless uses it. So a Debian distro, I mean Debian OS3 based distro uses it. So yep, definitely. It saves times. It can be painful to set up. I mean, to have something where you end up to a point where it passes everything, but in the end, the value is tremendous. Yeah. So thanks to those tools, to our processes, to make sure that we force enterprise developer to push their changes upstream. So we were still able to upgrade GNOME, which is kind of a big stack. Just for SLE, it's around 200 packages, which are intermixed. I didn't check for Tumbleweed, but or Leap, it's probably maybe not a double, 300, between 300 and 400. We were able to do that for Tumbleweed in a month, for in total for all the distro in 4 months, a bit less than that. And one thing is we maintain quality. We didn't ship, especially for the Tumbleweed user, they didn't got a breakage due to upgrade of the desktop because it was not released until it was passing the automated QA test. And that's what we want. I mean, I think we probably can, everybody in the audience can agree on that. We don't want to ship broken stuff to other users. So it's nice. I think we can do better. I hope we'll do better, like doing things more in parallel, having more people joining initially to do the initial revision updates as part of GNOME Next, making sure that we do in parallel something we didn't do for time constraint, having Leap and SLE work being done in parallel, not one after the other. But we are getting there. Any question, comments? Yes. So yeah.
Yes, a question about the binaries that are not rebuilt in SLE, but when they depend on something that was changed, do you ever have breakages because of that?
So question.
In SLE?
Yeah. Question was because we import binary RPM binaries in SLE. If those binaries depend on another as a dependency on another package which is updated, is there breakage? In the SLE world, it should not, because the reason why we do this kind of binary import is we guarantee to our user ABI compatibility. So far, the ABI compatibility usually is kind of enforced by the SO name, and we use a policy which is derived from the Debian policy of having a package named by the SO name. So when things start to be like the upstream has changed their API so that the API is different, so it ends up with a SO name where the major is bumped. We will see that, and we will either, in that case, say it's fine, it will use the old copy, the old package. But very often in that case, we will update this binary package to either a more recent version of the package, or we will, for this one, we say, we want to instantiate it in SP2 and rebuild it so that it's used only the latest version of the library. Other question? Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of linked. So what you said about the transition between SLE and LEAP, so to make it smoother, if you would it help to introduce periodic tests, like rebuilding everything, so you clearly know what to grow, or do you have other solutions to make it smoother?
Alors, sorry, sticking to English. Question was to mitigate a bit all the difficulties of LEAP not being able to rebuild because of SLE changing things and not discovering that, oh my God, we are breaking LEAP. Did we try to do periodic rebuild of all of this kind of thing? Sorry, we don't. The reason is also because we have the staging, which are always monitoring what's happening on SLE. So we, those staging use a snapshot which is usually refreshed. I think it's on a weekly basis. So every week on LEAP we will discover the breakage as soon as they appear, because the base of LEAP is SLE. So we will see that there are changes in SLE, and then we see that it's breaking. So we don't have the concept of let's rebuild the entire distro and see what's break, because the OBS is doing that constantly, monitoring all the build requires, etc. And with this idea of taking a snapshot of a distro and then updating this snapshot from time to time. Any other question? Nope. So thank you.